Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jackie Ferrato, and I'm the Community Relations Manager with the Washington 529 College Savings Plans, or also known as the Education Savings Plans, which include the Guaranteed Education Tuition Program and the DreamAhead College Investment Plan. Thank you for joining me this afternoon during your lunch hour for about 30 minutes of time for me to share this information and do some WA529 basics about the GET program and the DreamAhead plan. So a couple things I want you to know ahead of time before we kind of get through or get started in all the basic information about the programs is this is being recorded, so we will post the recording. I'm going to shoot for today, but sometimes it just depends on how the resources I have to get it posted onto the website, but we do plan to post a recording. But also probably more helpful to you will be the PowerPoint slide deck. There are resources that I'm going to be talking about while I'm presenting this information that are included in the slide deck. So we'll be emailing that to you after the webinar is over with, and they have hyperlinks in them that will take you directly to many of the areas of things that I'm going to be talking about, so you don't have to be digging around on the website and wondering where that information is. So the PowerPoint slide deck will be really useful to you afterwards. So you'll want to, the email that you use to register for the session will be the email that we use to send this information to you. The main thing we're going to be talking about today, I want to make sure that I'm going to cover an overview of 529 plans in general. We're going to start with that, but then we're going to move into talking a little bit more about the GET program and the DreamAhead plan specifically, because those are the two 529 plans that Washington sponsors. Along the way, I'm going to cover things such as how do you access the money when you're ready to use it? How do you get started? You know, what it looks like to open an account. And then also some of the frequently asked questions, not all of them, but we will have a link to how you can get to some of those other ones. We're going to talk about the most common ones. And then I'm going to end with some tips and some resources that'll be really useful for you after the end of the webinar to kind of connect with some of the things that I've talked about. So with that, we're going to jump right in. I did want to tell you, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. My colleague Liz Rosbach is actually on the call as well, and she will be managing any questions that come through the Q&A and doing that while I continue to present. The chat box is a little bit different, preferring to keep any questions into the Q&A. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we often, many of the questions or the common questions are part of the presentation. So keep that in mind as you're asking them and take a look at them as, if other people can see that, that might be helpful in knowing if somebody's already asking the question that you might be looking for. You're also going to have access to reaching out to us after the webinar if you have additional questions that we maybe didn't cover while you were here with us. So the goal is to get through the information that is most important to you. And with that, let's talk first about student success and 529 plans. It's always a good place to start and set kind of the tone for understanding the purpose of 529 plans and how they help with saving for your kids' future education expenses. So the first thing I want to mention is about your student success. We all know that our children and all children are learning way before they even enter a classroom. And so how we plan and support the student, not just academically, but also financially for the education that they're going to receive. There is a report done by the Center for Social Development that indicates that a child with a dedicated savings account and intentionally meant for their education, that those kids are 7 times more likely to graduate from high school and continue on in an educational pathway towards career and job training. Now, keeping that in mind, career and job training, there was another report by the Center of Education in the Workforce, and this one's pretty kind of mind-blowing a little bit, is that more than 70% of the job openings today are requiring some level of education beyond high school. So whether your kids are going to choose to attend four-year public or private university, or their career choices are going to take them through a community, technical, or vocational training for a certificated program, or even an apprenticeship program, every pathway to education is invaluable to them. So that's what will help them secure whatever job or career choice they're going to have in the future. So this is part of that understanding. And then lastly is saving money, and any savings that you do, including 529 plans combined with other ways of saving, really help to reduce the potential for too much student loan debt that the student could incur without having any of the savings and financial aid and scholarship pieces in place. So all these things work together. Now, jumping right into what is a 529 plan, and many of you may already know what this is, but it's always a good place to kind of, again, set the foundation for understanding then GET and DreamAhead specifically. So 529 plans are known as tax advantaged college savings plans. They were created to encourage and support and help families to save money while the kids were young. And as they're saving this money, the earnings are going to be growing tax-free, and then the distribution. So when the student starts using the money, it remains tax-free when the student uses it for qualified educational expenses at eligible educational institutions. Now, that's a mouthful. We're going to talk about those two things specifically in just a moment. But I want to remember to highlight the resource on this page, which is the College Savings Plan Network. This is the independent source of all 529 plans nationwide. Now, every state in the country has a 529 plan. There are two types. There are traditional 529 savings plans, and every state will have that. One exception to that is Wyoming. They don't have their own 529 plan. They actually partner with another state. But every state is represented and helps families within their state help their families save for their kids' future education expenses through a 529 plan. Now, the traditional plan we have here in Washington is called the DreamAhead College Investment Plan. Now, the other type of 529 plan is known as a prepaid tuition plan. The one we have here in Washington is the GET program, or the Guaranteed Education Tuition Program. Most people are familiar with the GET program because it's been open for almost 25 years now. So the GET program is a prepaid tuition plan. The DreamAhead investment plan is a traditional 529 college savings plan. Both of them are under the umbrella of 529 plans. Now, every state in the country does not have a prepaid tuition plan. So it's unique here for Washington to have both types. Now, I mentioned earlier in the previous slide the qualified educational expenses. So this is the question of what can the money be used for? And the basic things are going to be tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies. But there's also an extended number of things that are considered qualified expenses. On the next slide, I'm going to show you if there's more of a description of what each of those are. But before I leave this slide, I want to remember to point out, because this becomes one of the most common questions, is about where can your student use their money? Whether it's a GET account or a DreamAhead account, there's often been some misconceptions that the money could only be used in Washington or only be used at UW or WSU or a particular type of school or a particular expense. When in fact, your kids and your grandkids into the future can choose to attend a public or a private four-year college or university anywhere in the United States, and even some schools in foreign countries. They might choose a community or a technical or vocational school, and they may also choose to be enrolled in a registered apprenticeship program. So all of those are going to be very valuable pathways to education. So your kids do not just have to go to a school in Washington or just go to a school at like the UW or WSU. Now, those qualified educational expenses that I mentioned, again, tuition and fees is pretty much at the top of the list, alongside room and board. Now, with room and board, the student does need to be enrolled in a program of study at least half time for room and board expenses to be considered qualified. Now, the student can live on or off campus. And if they are living off campus, there's going to be some limitations around how much is actually reimbursable. And that is something to make note of. Off campus is the amount that you're requesting it's a reimbursement, not a payment to. So the program won't be paying like their apartment bill or their rent bill. The account owner would be requesting reimbursement for that. Now, some other expenses such as books and supplies, required supplies, and computers, laptops, peripheral equipment that will support the student using that laptop and computer, as well as the internet service. Now, the link that I have on here is IRS Publication 970, and specifically Chapter 7 actually gives a full description of these qualified educational expenses. There may be some special needs expenses that are related to your students' enrollment if they have special needs that need to be met. There's again, I mentioned the apprenticeship programs. There's some expenses that are considered qualified if they're enrolled in a registered apprenticeship program. And that registration means that the apprenticeship program itself is registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. So I do have some resources towards the end of the slide deck that will help you do some search and determining apprenticeship programs and qualified or other eligible institutions. I'll point that out when I get there. It won't be, it'll be a link to a resource that you can get to. You can also use your 529 account to pay down existing student loans for a particular student or even a sibling of a particular student. So for example, if both my kids have accounts, 529 accounts, and one student doesn't need to use all their money, but another student does need some, you can transfer that money to them. If any one of those students in the family has some student loan debt that can be paid down with the money in the 529 account, you can use it for that up to $10,000. And then there are some families who have anticipated using some of their 529 accounts to pay towards K through 12 private school tuition. Now that was actually passed on a federal level several years ago to allow that as a qualified educational expense. However, it's not often that people will use their 529 accounts for K through 12 tuition. It can be done, but not every state in the country will allow it. So if you have a Get or a DreamAhead account, that is possible. You would be using it taking it out of your account on a reimbursement basis. Some other plans don't allow it. So if you have a different 529 plan and you have that idea that you might use it for that, you would want to reach out to your 529 plan and find out. Now we're going to talk more specifically about Get and DreamAhead. And again, the highlighting this is because one, these are the two plans that Washington sponsors. But remember, just because you have a Get or a DreamAhead account, the money in the account you can use towards expenses wherever your student goes, providing that the school or the program of study that they're choosing is an eligible educational institution. Now, two things to keep in mind that kind of help outline the features of the type of 529 plan it is. What I mean by that is that prepaid tuition plans will typically have an enrollment period and an expected residency requirement at the time you're opening up the account. So with the Get program, the owner or the student would have to be living in Washington State when you're opening the Get account, but certainly the student can move, the owner can move. Nobody needs to remain living in Washington. Anybody moving can still contribute to it and withdraw from it. So residency is pretty typical with prepaid plans that you live in the state that you're opening the account for. An enrollment period is also something that's a feature of prepaid tuition plans. So that's a window of time every year when new accounts can be open. The Get program enrollment period is November through May. So we opened November 2022 for this current enrollment period. That means you'll go through the end of May with that window open to get accounts started. Once the account's open, you can contribute at any time. Now, one thing you'll notice in this slide is that the DreamAhead side shows that there are no residency requirements to open a DreamAhead account. So anybody living anywhere and a student living anywhere can open up a DreamAhead account at any time. And enrollment is open year round. And that's pretty typical of those types of 529 plans, to have open enrollment year round and that anybody from anywhere can have an account. Now, those two things, enrollment and residency, are simply features of the 529 plan that they are. They're not really the kinds of things that people generally weigh as, having a preference over one or the other. They're just simply features. Now, the most unique thing about the GET program will continue to be the guarantee. What our state legislature did when they created the GET program is that they wrote into law that the value of a GET account will always keep pace with the tuition growth of the highest priced Washington Public University. So as you're putting money into a GET account, the value of it is keeping pace with UW and WSU's tuition growth. Again, whatever you've saved and whatever the earnings are on that can be used wherever the student attends their programs of study, ensuring that it's an eligible institution and they're using it for qualified expenses. Now, the GET program works on what we call a unit system. Now, units are just a form of measurement where 100 units represents 1 year of time. So every time dollars or money is being contributed into a GET account, that every year there is a unit purchase price. So you're accumulating units based on what the price is that year and how much you contribute. So for example, this year's unit price is $116.63 per unit. If you open an account and you have 2 children that you're saving for, and you decided you wanted to save $50 a month for them, you can put that $50, or it can even be 10 or 25 or even more than 50. It can be any amount that you are comfortable with saving. Whatever amount goes in will purchase units or portions of units based on that year's price. That's how the units are accumulated. Now, tying it back to the guarantee, 100 units will always equal what the actual cost of tuition and state mandated fees is that year that you're going to use it at the UW or WSU, whichever of those two schools ends up being the highest. So the payout value is tied to the tuition growth at the UW and WSU. But again, you can use the money in your account towards expenses wherever the student chooses to go. Now, I talked about purchasing units. You can do that regularly. Oftentimes, people will set it up on their own side. They make their own personal commitment. I'm going to put $50 a month away. You can do more or less. You can put contributions into the account sporadically. Grandparents may choose to do that on birthdays and holidays. The idea is to have a contribution going into the account and building up your savings as it works for you. And so there's no right or wrong way to do it. There are many, many families who do a regular plan. They've decided this is my budget and this is what I'm going to do. Others who have periodic or occasional deposits, including families who are contributing on a regular or occasional basis. So there's no right or wrong way to purchase GET units or to have money contributed to the account. Now, looking at the DreamAhead side, what you'll notice that is different than GET is that the value of a DreamAhead account is actually tied to the performance of the investment. So DreamAhead actually resembles like your retirement accounts, your voluntary retirement accounts are right now. You make some decisions. When you open up a DreamAhead account, you take a look at a variety of different investment portfolios, and you make the decision about how you want your money invested. Much like GET, you decide what your budget amount is. What are you comfortable saving? Again, it could be 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or more. And if you're doing it on a regular basis, this money goes into the account, whatever investment portfolio you have chosen, the money is then invested. And the value of your account going forward is always going to be dependent on the performance of that investment. So investment returns fluctuate from time to time, so the value of it will be fluctuating over time. Now, sometimes people kind of hear those two things about Get and Dream Ahead, and they may resonate towards one or the other. And that's perfectly fine way of looking at it. There's not one plan is not better than the other. Get has certain features that Dream Ahead doesn't, and Dream Ahead has features that Get doesn't. And in fact, you can save for the same child having money in both types of accounts. Keeping in mind, Get keeps pace with tuition growth and tuition changes one time a year. Dream Ahead keeps pace, or the investment or the value of the account is dependent on the performance of the investment, and that happens over time as well. So having money in both places have different outcomes. There are times when tuition growth has outpaced, it's been greater than investment returns, and other times where investment returns are greater than tuition growth. So that's, again, a strategy for saving, is putting your money in a variety of different savings vehicles so that you can take advantage of those different outcomes. Now, I mentioned with the Dream Ahead plan, you choose from a variety of different portfolios. You'll notice here on this slide that there are the hyperlinks that'll take you to the pages on the website that talk specifically about that. Now, with either plan, Get or Dream Ahead, there are no enrollment fees for getting accounts open. With Dream Ahead, you do open the account with an initial $25 contribution, and then any ongoing contributions into whatever portfolio you have chosen or variety of portfolios, it needs to be a minimum of $5 per portfolio. With the Get account, you make an initial deposit. You have to purchase at this point at least one unit in the first 3 months. So how you decide to make contributions in those first 30 days to meet that is fine. Some people put in the full amount at one time or spread it out over several months. And then any amount that you choose to put in thereafter can go in at any interval that you choose to. We do encourage you to, just like if you were saving it in a bank or a credit union account, is to make something as regular as you possibly can. And in fact, automating it is really where many people find the best success in continuing that savings, is setting an amount that feels comfortable for you, but having it automated, whether you're setting it up through an ACH or using your own bill pay service to make contributions, or even payroll direct deposit. So if your employer is providing you a payroll deduction as an option or a feature to have money deposited into your Get or Dream Ahead account, that's another way of automating your savings and having money go directly into your Get or Dream Ahead account specifically for saving for education. Now, if you have more questions about payroll direct deposit, we have information on the website, but I'm also happy to share that information with your employer if they're not currently offering that. Now, some of the most common questions, again, these aren't going to be all of the questions that are on our frequently asked question page. It's a very useful tool is to take a look at FAQs. But some of the ones that come up the most are, what happens if the kids get a scholarship and you've saved this money all this time? What happens to the money? And one of the things we really suggest is to consider what other things need to be paid. So if the student scholarship covers tuition or fees or both, there's some room and board expenses, or there's books and supplies. So you can use the money towards those other qualified expenses, but you can also just hold on to it and save it. Maybe the student might need it in another year, so you wouldn't want it to go away. You can also transfer it to another family member. So if you've got two kids and one needs more money than another one because of the school or career or the training class or programs that they're in, you can move money between beneficiaries. And the other question that comes up is, what if the kids decide that they're not going to go to college? And I think you might remember from one of the very first things I mentioned was that there's so many different pathways to education. It's not just a 4-year college or university. So if the student has an idea in mind about kind of what career choices they're going to have, education that they get and where they're going to plan to get that will determine when and how much they're even going to need to use. So having a conversation with the student first and finding out like what kind of career choices are you having, what kind of school choices are there to meet that for them, and using the money for the school that they're planning to actually attend. So using it that way, hold on to it. I mentioned it in the other question about scholarships. You don't have to use the money right away. You may sometimes need to just let the student have some time to make some decisions. They don't have to use it right away. Also transferring to other family members. And refunding, that question comes up as well, whether or not you can refund your GET or your DreamAhead account or any 529 plan. And the answer is yes, you can. You'll want to make sure that the plan that you have, so if it's a GET or DreamAhead account, always take a look at the cancellation or refund policy. The most important thing to remember about refunding a 529 plan is that when you've been putting money into the account or any dollars that have gone into the account, those dollars have already been taxed, but the earnings portion is what has been growing tax-free while it's been being saved. And as long as it's used for qualified expenses, then it remains untaxed. So if you refund it, the earnings portion becomes taxable to the account owner, and the IRS would also assess a 10% penalty fee. So that's why those two other questions, like scholarships and if the kids decide not to go to college, there's a variety of options you have before taking the refund. But certainly if you ever decide to refund the account, you'll want to make sure that you understand that piece. So take a look at any cancellation and refund policy information on the website before you initiate that request. Now, family and friends can contribute as well. I mentioned that early on. The main things a family would need to know to make deposits into your account that you've set up for your children, or if there's an account for grandchildren, is the plan that you've chosen. So is it GET or DreamAhead? What are the account numbers in which this money needs to be deposited? And each child who would have an account would need to be named as a beneficiary on their own account. And then they need that, and they need the address in which funds are sent. Now, knowing those three things, they can set it up as a bill pay with their own financial institution. They can set it up as an ACH, as an automatic deposit on a regular basis, or they can simply write a check or send a money order and mail the payment in. There's a variety of different ways that they could do that. The website also has a Give a Gift page that helps explain the gifting process. Grandparents might have more of a larger amount of money that they'd be interested in contributing, so that would be information that would be helpful for them to know. So take a look at the Give a Gift page on the website for details on gifting money and how to share that information with your family and friends. Now, enrolling is about getting the account open. That's actually the first step in getting started. The first step is learning about it. The second step would be getting the account open. So there are no enrollment fees for opening up accounts. So you simply go to 529.wa.gov website and you'll select it. If it's a GET account you want to open or DreamAhead, you follow the path. And a couple things that you'll notice as you start that enrollment form is you're going to first create your login ID and password, so your profile, which will be assigned to the account owner. And then you'll do an enrollment form for 1, 2, or however many children you plan to save for. Remember, there are no enrollment fees for starting or getting accounts open. So once you get the account open, at that point, it just begins to be about saving. And ideally, you've had some decisions or have come to some planning about how much you want to save and how often you want to save. So once the account's open, you can begin saving at any time. Couple things to remember about opening up the accounts online too is that when you're doing it online, as soon as you're done with the enrollment, you get a confirmation with the account number, and then you'll receive a welcome email with additional information. So the process itself is pretty fast and easy. Depends on how much information you have already ready to go, like name, address, date of birth, and important contact information for the people who will be named on the account. Have all that ready before you sit down. Remember, the GET enrollment period is November through May. So if you're interested in opening a GET account, you're going to want to make sure you do that before no later than May 31st. We'll close through June, July, August, and September for enrollment only. And then in November, we will reopen again the next enrollment period. But DreamAhead is open year-round. I mentioned a couple times about saving in a variety of different ways. Diversifying your savings is a great saving strategy because there's often different ways that people will save, and there are different outcomes with them. There's not one and only one perfect way of doing this. And in fact, pairing up and having a combination of different ways of savings really gives you that opportunity to take advantage of the different outcomes. So oftentimes families might have a Coverdell account already, or grandma and grandpa may have opened up Gerber Life accounts for grandchildren. Parents might have a Roth IRA that they're saving also for their kids' education. There's a variety of different ways to do that. And the hyperlink here will take you to a page on the website that will actually outline these other ways that people save in addition to a 529 plan. So they complement each other. They don't work against each other. In my own family, when my grandkids were little, grandkids had 529 plans from other states from the other grandparents. We had GET accounts for them. And then their parents also had savings accounts at the bank. So having these variety of different buckets is not a bad way of saving. Now we are officially at about 12:30, and I had promised only about 30 minutes. So I think my colleague has been able to answer some of the questions that were coming through. While she continues to do that, or if anybody has additional questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. I do want to highlight some of the resources that I either mentioned already or told you I would highlight at the end. So one thing in particular is the Washington Student Achievement Council is our parent agency. They are also the state financial aid administrator. So if you have kids who are in high school now, getting ready to kind of transition into high school or even transition out of high school, there's a lot of good resources there to help you through learning more about the Washington College Grant, the College Bound Scholarship Program, and other resources for completing the financial aid forms, applying for scholarships through the washboard.org. So there's a lot of good resources that may be helpful to you. The College Savings Plan Network, again, is the independent source of all 529 plans nationwide. IRS Publication 970 will outline the tax benefits and a detailed explanation of the qualified educational expenses. Chapter 7 is where you're going to want to go in that publication. That's a large publication, so remembering Chapter 7, it will get you right to where you need to be. If you're looking specifically to confirm a public or a private, a community, vocational or technical school in the US or abroad, you can go to the federal school code search and find a particular school. If they have a US federal ID code, they meet that eligibility. So that's just a way to confirm it. And remember, any public or private, community, technical, or vocational school in the US, there are also schools in foreign countries that meet that. So you want to double check that when your kids are ready to start looking at where they may attend. Apprenticeship programs, again, if it's registered with the US Department of Labor, so there's a link there. Now, there's going to be some new FAFSA changes that come up in the next academic year. So this coming fall for the 24 academic year. These benefits are, or these changes benefit other people who might be the named owner of a 529 plan for a student. So that might be something to read about and just be prepared for. These are not changes that it's a lot of the changes that are happening are actually changes for the better. It's reducing some of the questions, but also if a grandparent or a custodial parent owns the 529 plan, it will no longer be considered a untaxed income. It would be not reported as untaxed income for the student. So that would make it a little bit easier for the student to when applying for financial aid, because it's not untaxed income to them. So take a look at the article. It's some great resource information for parents and students who are filling out FAFSA forms. We have our virtual learning center, which is where we host a variety of different webinars, such as this one, and some short videos, so things that answer some of the questions. I think one of the best resources we can also give you is we host every other week, we host what's called Q&A with WA529. It's not an official webinar, it's just an open hour of time. If you have questions about GET or DreamAhead, and you want to talk to somebody, and this is not account specific. So if you already have a GET account or a DreamAhead account and you want to talk to somebody about your GET or DreamAhead account, you do need to reach out to the contact center. So I'll give you that information in a moment. But if you just have questions in general, like after this webinar and you want to chat, you can join one of our Q&A sessions, check our virtual learning center for the dates and time. And then we have contact information. I'm going to take a look real quick at some of the questions that are coming in. I might take a few of these, Liz, for you. So Tom, I'm going to answer your question. Is there a chart showing price changes in GET units since inception? We do have a chart on the website. We can make sure that you have that. We'll provide the link to everybody in the email that we send out to everybody. I don't believe, though, that it's not going to be a chart that compares to the typical market return in the same period, because again, GET and DreamAhead are two different plans, but I hope that what we'll be able to link you to is the information that will help you take a look at both sides of that. So I hope that that's helpful to you. We'll make sure that it's part of the email, that you have a link to where that information is. I'm going to take Parashar Patel's question, unless she's answered it. Okay, Liz, I'm going to take that one. Okay, so even after you have residual money after finishing, college is finished, what are the options for money left over in case you have more? So Parashar, one of the things that you might do if the student is then graduated and there's still money sitting in the account, you can certainly leave it there and wait. The student may pick up some more additional education going further, like a master's or a graduate program. So waiting to use it, using it all. You can also transfer the money to another family member. So if there's still somebody else who's in the family who is getting ready to continue on or have or start at their education enrollment, you can move the money to them. You can also refund it if you wanted to do that. So there's a variety of different things. Take a look at the FAQs and that talk about that, or the slide that I mentioned if the student got a scholarship or the student graduated. Also remembering that if there's any student loan debt that was accumulated over time, you can use some up to $10,000 if that's what you have in your 529 account to pay that down. So that would be something to think about as well. I hope that that's been helpful for everybody. I appreciate that you took time out of your lunch to learn a little bit more about GET and DreamAhead. And again, we'll make sure that you get the PowerPoint slide deck with the resources that I mentioned during the presentation. And if you have any questions that come up afterwards, don't hesitate to reach out. The email address will be a part of what is included in it. When you get the email address, it'll include my contact information. So you can certainly reach out to us that way. We thank you again for taking your time out today and being here. I hope you enjoy the weather. It's really sunny out there today. Have a great day.